I believe the time is 7:53.
Oh, I'm never gonna ever. I'll be there for the live on time.
The fuck you will.
Hey, you won't.
I'll be with Brennan. I'll have him.
Well, you gotta be because I'm not bringing any tech shit. So it's just
That's
gonna be
true.
me sitting in a
That's
fucking chair
true.
having conversations with people.
Boom, motherfuckers! I'll have this shit set up. I
Mm.
hope.
We're just gonna tell you the time is like 6 o'clock when it's really 7. Then hopefully you
Oh,
can be there by 6:30.
that's good because I got dog time.
I don't know what that means.
It means dogs don't know how to keep track of any time because the concept doesn't register to them.
That is 100% a term that you made up just now.
Awesome.
Ooh, 7:53. You were spot on, Brennan.
Yeah, well, that's why I brought that up.
You were spot on.
The funny thing is that it told me the host joined at like 7:51. He just didn't fucking do anything. But
Same. Because I was
yeah,
like, are
yeah.
we not here or what?
Oh, shit, what was I gonna say?
You're gonna say chicken butt.
Dear Lord, who let you on here?
We got 20 seconds.
You can invite him.
Oh, I'm still writing something down. I was hoping you guys had more.
Oh,
Just trying to
then
play
don't
with time.
fucking give us a clock when it's. I was ready an hour ago, man.
We have
I
8
was born
seconds.
ready. I was born
4,
ready.
3, 2, Brennan, chicken butt.
Fucking kill you.
Take a number, buddy. A long line, I'm sure.
Probably.
Yeah. At least I'm cute.
What's
Hi,
up,
Rich.
guys?
Hey,
Welcome back to Dead Headspace, everybody. This is episode 212. We have a third time returning guest. His name is Richard Chizmar. Say hello, Richard.
Hey, how are you?
Of course, my name is Patrick R. McDonough, and my two friends that host this show with me are Candace Nola. Say hello, Candace.
Hello.
And Brennan LaFaro. Say hello, sir.
hello, everybody.
First time, just for anyone that wants to check out other Richard Chizmar content. First time we had him on was 2021, early season 2. Next time was January 31st. It was that opened up season 3. So needless to say, we're fans of Rich, and I mean we just become more ardent fans of your work, man. For real, like becoming the Boogeyman to me felt like with that in book 1 was like looking at if it was in film, Halloween 1 and 2. It just feels like 2 parts of the same extended, story. I want to know if, because I think we touched on this, if there's going to be a next book when we had John last. I want to know if you were nervous writing this. What? No, actually, I got a question. I don't know if you've been asked this before. I'd love to know. Were you more nervous tampering with a sequel to what is a great book? Like, were you nervous that, like, hey, I have a lot to live up to? Or were you more nervous writing with Stephen King?
With King for sure, but only in the beginning. I mean, like I've said before, only that first, literally those first like, you know, half a day, and then all those nerves went away. But yeah, no, I was scared to death to do that. Yeah, yeah. This wasn't a big deal. I didn't really give much thought to a sequel, and Simon and Schuster was enthusiastic, but they really after the first Boogeyman, I signed a 2-book deal with them, and they wanted to have the standalone come next and then the sequel. And I kind of just, I had already started working on the sequel, and I really wanted to write that and be done and have it be published next. So, and I understand their concerns, because sequels are tricky things. Number one, to kind of measure up to the first one. And then even sales wise, they're tricky. That historically they don't sell as well, and they don't, they're not as received as well. Blah blah blah. Same thing with movies. So, yeah, I think other people were a little bit more nervous than I was. I'm kind of too just happy go lucky to get nervous about that. I've learned after 35 years, editorially, you're never going to make everyone happy, so just make yourself happy and go with that.
I love that. They're not as received as well. They don't sell as well, but you went down that route anyway. Now, when we talked about Chasing, and Patrick and I both absolutely loved that book. you did something so original with that mix of true crime and fiction, with while also kind of touching on that H.G. Wells War of the Worlds radio telecast, where I would imagine to this day you still get a little bit of like, hey man, like, was that real? Like, did that happen?
Every
So
day, honestly.
that's fantastic. So when you hit the sequel, what kind of steps did you take to basically take that unique approach to writing a book and take it to the next level? What did you want to add to this one to really just make it special compared to the first one?
You know what? I didn't. Again, I'm going to come on here and not sound nearly as smart as I should be trying to sound. But I really just follow the story, and that's something that I actually, I think I've always done that out of lack of whatever it is, foresight or whatever, skill, brains. I've just always followed the story where it takes me without too much thought on whether it's going to be well received or be successful. So for this one, it was just, I had the idea. I had no intentions of writing a sequel. One day I got the idea full fledged for the first chapter of Becoming the Boogeyman. And the big thing for me was the reveal that occurs at the end of the first chapter that ties it into Chasing the Boogeyman. Once I had that idea, I was like, damn, I got to write this book. So I knew I had to play it straight again. I knew that was the only way that I could tell a story, was to be playing, this is me again. This is real life. This picks up where Chasing the Boogeyman left off. Josh Gallagher's in jail and in prison rather. And I'm going to include pictures, and I'm going to play it, straight, like this is a true crime book again. I did, in the beginning, like you asked, what did I want to do? What thought process was involved to kind of take it to the next level? The only thing I really did besides make that decision that I was going to play it straight and have photos was I wanted to capture some of that same nostalgic feel that was in the first book. And that's where Edgewood Looking Back, which is the fictional book that I excerpt throughout in between the chapters of Becoming the Boogeyman, that's where that came from. And I had a little concern that is the book going to be a little too busy like this? Photographs, excerpts. I have excerpts of interviews with prison guards and Joshua Gallagher's friends and relatives, and Joshua himself. But in the end, I just thought it reads as seamless as I think it can, and it didn't distract from me. And once my agent and publisher, read it, they agreed. I was like, yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I'm probably not smart enough to kind of plan out how I'm going to take this book to the next level. So I just told the story that was in front of me and went with it, like that.
I love the idea of you said the I want to call them interludes. That's not the word you used, but
it is actually.
Okay.
It is. Yeah. I at least in the manuscript, I don't know if that made it into the book. Probably not. But in my mock-up table of contents, it was interlude 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're reading.
It might just be that I have Monday brain and I heard a different word. But when we talked about the first book, we talked about that authenticity of, Edgewood coming to life, because you know that town. It's where you grew up, it's where you lived, and you really brought it to the page. And those interludes add that authenticity to, that almost kind of surreal story. And, one part that I feel like you must have had a blast writing that I really enjoyed was the Chizapalooza. And I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
I did this on an earlier show, so I'm sorry you guys didn't get the scoop, but this is the t-shirt design that I had printed up for the big launch party that we're having here, and it's a Chizapalooza t-shirt 2023. I did have a lot of fun writing that section, and most of the stuff in there is I'll take some abuse for that. I did tone it down, but yeah, I'm sure I'm going to be called an idiot by some of the more mature reading groups. But yeah, that encapsulates my friends and I right there in a nutshell. Just a bunch of dumb big kids, and enjoying life, and yeah, my editor who is brilliant, he had some thoughts about that, and he wondered if it took us out of the story. And I said, well, I'm gonna kind of tweak it a little bit so it's more of a part of the story. And really, that was my secret way of making sure that it was not going to be taken out, because I wanted that chapter in there very badly. And yeah, I'm glad it stayed. I did have a blast writing it, and those guys are all coming to the big launch party. So I already told them, I said, get ready to sign some t-shirts.
Now you mentioned that your main approach to this was just follow the story, and I think that's an admirable approach, because I think that there are not that there aren't a lot of writers these days that are just pure storytellers, but when that idea comes to mind, I think of people like Stephen King, I think of people like Joe Lansdale, and to basically avoid the notion of overthinking this and just kind of follow the story where it leads you, I think that's a really good approach. Now, as far as that's concerned, one thing that I really liked about this is you were not afraid. You put yourself, you're the first person character, you're the main character, and you're not afraid to kind of make the Richard Chizmar of the book flawed. I mean,
Right,
yeah, not everybody thinks that you're this like brilliant writer genius, chronicling the Boogeyman story. There's a lot of
even my wife doesn't
blowback
think
at
that.
you.
Even my wife doesn't think that in the book, and Carly certainly doesn't. So yeah, no, that was fun to kind of poke that fun at myself, and to have people call me a hack, and again, I tried to do that in the first book, even though I wasn't a successful writer at that point, in '88, I was just a kid out of college. I tried to be as honest as I could when it came to how I would react to the murders, how I would react to what was happening in my town, even when it didn't necessarily, shine a positive light on myself. And I think I took that a step further with this book, and I was really trying to kind of explore that dynamic that exists about, why guys like us and women like us, like this stuff. Why are we attracted to the dark side? Why do we like horror fiction and movies? And at the same time, drawing a very clear, distinctive line between the people who are so obsessed with true crime that they're, walking around with t-shirts that have, murderers, embossed on the back of them, Charlie Manson or whoever. It's one thing to wear, Michael Myers on the back of your shirt. It's another thing to wear a shirt that has Ted Bundy on the back. Inside the shape of a heart or something. And I kind of, had, it was interesting to play around with that whole dynamic of where that line is. And, I think I said, there's people out there with dark intentions who are very interested in true crime and horror fiction, and they're very different than us, fortunately.
I think that's some good social commentary. You keep saying, "Hey, I'm going to come off as, just kind of flying by the seat of my pants," but that's a really good conversation to have. Is where do we draw the line? Obviously, we got Michael Myers way over here. We've got Ted Bundy way over here. But when we meet in the middle, where do we kind of find, that separation? I've been hogging. Candace, I'd like to throw it to you.
Sure, just throw me in the middle. Well, Rich, I will admit, I thought it was a real.
Good. That makes me happy.
So you nailed it as far as that goes. I got all the way to the end and I was like, wait a minute. But I started to get confused about, I don't know, maybe halfway through, because you were making a lot of mentions of Pittsburgh. And all this was in like 2019. And I'm reading it like, wait, how did I miss this? So I started looking for things like, did I miss something here? So yeah, you certainly nailed the whole true crime feel. Everything that was in it worked well because I was all in. Like I was reading all the parts and the interviews and everything. I probably tore through the book in about a day and a half because I wanted to see what was happening next and what was going to take place next. To touch on the Chizapalooza part,
Yes.
I loved it.
Good.
Um, I actually thought it worked very well because in the midst of a high tension situation that you put yourself in, some sort of stress relief sort of event or moment would be expected, if not justified. And you having that in there, I think made it a lot more realistic too. Just that moment of just unwinding and being with your friends and the way you wrote everything that happened. It felt so real in the way your kids were in there and you guys drawing on each other's faces and just
Yeah.
everything that happened.
You know, my
It
argument for my editor, I'm sorry to interrupt you, was
no,
that
you're fine.
was that, and because I love that you're saying this, it makes me happy. Was just that, just like in horror movies, you got to have those moments of levity to
Mhm.
make the dark stuff and the jump scares and all that stuff, that much more impactful. And
Yeah.
and I tried to make it as realistic as I could, not only the goofiness, but what, you know, my wife and Carly encouraging it,
Mhm.
being the smarter of the, hopefully
Right.
people read the book and realize that although there are women who are killed in this book, because this killer's targeting them, they'll see how strong these female characters are. And again, that wasn't intentional. My wife,
Right.
she's a tough lady, and Carly, just like in the first book, she's kind of a composite of my sisters and friends and some strong women in my life. I loved the fact that it was them who convinced me to go ahead and do this. And
Yeah.
that's something that would happen in real life. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I got
Yeah.
3 sisters. So number one, I'm used to being bossed around even now.
Yep.
And two, they're, I'll always, be the first in line to say that with women come wisdom, in most cases. So I love the fact that they were the one who nudged me. Go ahead and be with your knucklehead friends, because if you don't,
Yeah.
you combust. And it was Carly who
Right.
figured out how to sneak them in and all that. So anyway, you can keep going, but I wanted to interrupt because I'm glad that you thought it worked and that it actually helped the story.
Yeah, it did. I just think it was a very realistic part of it, and it's certainly one of those things that would tend to take place in a situation like that, because if there isn't those moments, you're gonna explode. Like the stress and the tension and everything just builds and builds and builds. And if you don't have something in there, you kind of need that. And I think that really hit home. Like it just made everything sound and feel that much more realistic, because I was like, in the middle of this story, now don't forget, I thought all of this was happening for a while.
Right.
So I was like, oh my God, but this is one of those things where it was just like, here you are, and you have all this family and your friends are in, and it seems like even if that was not a planned event, I feel like your friends would have appeared at that point anyway and been like, we're here, we got you, we're going to help you with this. And it would have naturally evolved into a sort of friend reunion, just hang out and chill and kind of let some of that stress out. It's just one of those natural things that take place when you have a support system like that in place.
Right.
And that is why I liked it as much as I did, because I was like, this is entirely natural and relatable, and it just brought so much more to just everybody in there that I just thought it was great on that note.
Thank you.
As far as the true crime approach, nailed it, because I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to read the first one. I've been reading through Gwendy and everything else and
Good.
all of my own stuff. And I absolutely thought that all of this was happening to you. And I also felt bad because I was like, all this was happening. And I was interviewing him for House of Stitch and I was doing this. And I was thinking back to like all these different things. And I was like, how did I miss?
Right.
So yeah, you absolutely nailed it. I do want to know, now that I'm done raving about it, were any parts of this true accounts, whether taken from your childhood, your life, or actual true events that you put in here that maybe happened to somebody but not necessarily happened to you?
Some of the crimes were based on, some of the murders were roughly based. I mean, that's the thing with serial killers. There's so much research right there at your hands,
Yeah.
fingertips that you can pull up. So it's inevitable that I didn't take any specific murder and model, one of my
Okay.
characters' murders, after it, but I'm sure different pieces. Something I did try to do was find things that I had never read about. There's a scene in the book where I'm talking about this infamous, serial murderer who plays a secondary role in the book. And I talked about how he was eating his victim's hair. I'd never read anything like that, but I put it in and it bothered the hell out of me for like the next 2 weeks while I was writing. Cause I just it's such a visual thing.
Yeah.
For someone putting clumps of hair in their mouth and chewing it and swallowing it that I couldn't get it out of my mind for a couple of weeks. So I knew that was, so that was something I went in prepared. If anyone tries to take that out, I'm not letting them, but nobody did, which is great. Yeah, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the interludes, as far as the excerpts from Edgewood looking back, the nostalgic stuff, a lot of that stuff really happened.
Okay.
I won't say which one didn't, because I don't want to have a spoiler in there. But just like Jason with Boogeyman, I drew so much of that directly from childhood memories, and I wanted that expansion into the second book of that whole angle of letting the reader really get to know not only me and my friends, but the town as a whole, because it makes what Joshua Gallagher has done to the town, past and present, just that much more sinister. I think I heard from a lot of people regarding the first book that they felt like they knew Edgewood. They felt like they grew up in a town like Edgewood. They wish they had grown up in a town like Edgewood. So when that's the case, I think just like when someone loves a character, they care that much more. When they love or they feel at home in a place, they feel the same way. So that's why I really wanted to have those in there. But yeah, we'll have to talk like a month after the book's out, so I can tell you, an expansion on some of those true stories. And they're ridiculous. They're little boys, they're teenagers, and but yeah, it was fun to go back and draw from memory banks and put it down on paper before I get old and senile and forget it all.
Nice. Patrick, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So just like your character, fake rich, we'll call him. So real quick is I grew up in a town similar to Edgewood. It's Bridgewater, Massachusetts, suburban town in Mass. And when I returned there years after moving from out of New England, I took a walk with my wife, and so much change. The playground literally it's leveled. There's a fence around an empty spot that used to be a playground. A lot of new developments. Long story short, I could relate because it's interesting. Your town is, Brennan actually talked about this with another guest, how the town's a character, but it's true in this story too, because it ages just like other places like Baltimore. I know it used to be more beautiful, and now it's not to knock it because that's your capital, but I know it's gone through a lot. Atlantic City, where I work, where I'm right near, that town's changed a lot for the worse. So like Edgewood, you describe it as you don't know what this town is. It's not where you grew up, and it's a different world. So I wanted to know if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, just that, again, I tried to portray it as honestly and as fairly as I could. Some things, just for someone who loves nostalgia like me, unabashed, appeal to me. People like me are never going to like change, especially with something that you hold that close to your heart, whether it's a baseball stadium or it's your hometown, or whether it's just, the house you grew up in. You're just, I'm always going to drive by and think, where the hell are my green shutters? That kind of thing. But what's interesting is I heard from people on the first Chasing the Boogeyman. They're like, hey, that's not the Edgewood I grew up in. And I'm like, well, I'm writing about 1988. I'm writing about the 70s when I was, younger in the coming of age stories. I don't know where you grew up in Edgewood. Depending on where you grew up, you could be accurate or I could be accurate. But at the same time, the point is, and I talk about that in that book, truth is always just dependent on, it's a subjective thing. To me, it's all about the eyes that are seeing it, and then the hands that are, writing the words as far as the truth of how they see something. So did I turn Edgewood into a little bit more of a Wonder Years type neighborhood? Yeah, but everything I wrote is true. We spent the night at each other's houses and snuck out at 10 p.m. and ran around the streets until 2 a.m, and we weren't worried. We were worried about like monsters and stuff, but we weren't worried about getting robbed or mugged or anything like that. 10 years later, yeah, you had, now you have something to worry about. So yeah, I tried to be fair, knowing that a lot of, Edgewood folks are going to read this. I almost put in a longer, paragraph in my acknowledgments to essentially say, hey, I might have been a little hard on Edgewood at times in this, but I do think I was being fair, and we just all have work to do. It's true. The folks who still live there, the folks who have moved out, who still, it's close to their heart. I give a scholarship every year to a graduate from Edgewood High School in my father's name. That's my way of giving back. I try to. I did an event recently that I really had no time to do because I'm trying to finish this new book and I got a lot of things going on, but it was Edgewood based. So I said yes, because I'm going to say yes. And that's what I mean. We all have a lot of work to do, and there's drugs there now, there's violence, and but there's still neighborhoods where the houses are kept up really nice and it's safe. And it's just that the wrong side of the tracks has kind of expanded some. And like so many neighborhoods, working class neighborhoods, the houses aren't as well kept as they once were, and that kind of thing. So in that regard, yeah, it's sad. I'm still there all the time. But, and I tried to get this across through Carly, it's still home. Carly, who in the book has traveled the world and she worked for the Post, and then she didn't, and she's been all over the place. And she kind of has that realization in that chapter where it's just like, this is where I grew up. This is where my parents were, live their life and ended their lives. And for all those reasons, this will always be home. And she says, I want to bring my daughters here. And I'm kind of looking at her for the first time, like, so yeah, I try to get that across because it'll always have that feeling for me, no matter what. So yeah, it was interesting, and that there was thought that was put into that because I want, like I said, for the fifth time now, I wanted to be fair, but I also, wanted to be, be compassionate too.
Sure, I get that. Two more questions. One's fairly quick. Peter Atkins is in there. That's after screenplay. Legend, right? Peter Atkins, Hellraiser 2, 3, really 4. That's awesome. Okay, so I guess no comment on that. I want to know what you think about Peter. For those I find it really cool when there's a writer that I like that likes another writer I like. So I just want to hear your thoughts on what you think as a fan of Peter.
Oh, he's just a good storyteller. I mean, that's what I like there, and that's usually what the writers I'm attracted to are. It's interesting because I know two of your favorites on the show are Peter Straub, who we've lost, and Joe Hinsdale. Yeah. And to me, they are like, they could not be more different.
Yeah.
As far as, I always bring up Peter as, he was this ultimate stylist and just wrote with such flourish, and he should have written with a word processor. It should have been like with a quill pen. And I have had great conversations with Peter in the past with his jazz music blasting in the background. And he's just like this mad freaking scientist. And then there's Joe, who he's been one of my favorite writers forever. I think when it comes to just pure storyteller, he's as good as we have.
Yeah.
I strongly suspect. I think he has a book on writing. I'm not sure, but I've never read it.
He's working on it. It's a memoir.
Is he working on it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, to me, I doubt he's someone who outlines much. I have a feeling he
doesn't.
Wherever the hell it goes, and I respect that. And I outlined the hell out of Chasing the Boogeyman because the ideas came so fast. I had to put them down on paper. I was afraid that I would lose my track. And I would lose, plot points that were important, because I'm old. And, but with Boogeyman, with Becoming the Boogeyman, I didn't really have to do that. In the book I'm writing now, I literally outline like a couple chapters and then I just go. And then if that starts happening, I start having too many ideas, I'll outline a couple of more chapters. But really, I texted, Steve King, and he asked about it. And I'm just like, dude, I am holding on to the story, by its shirt sleeve, and I'm just being dragged because I have no clue, where I'm going. And it's been kind of fun and exhilarating that way. Doing that with Steve only became fun after, by the time we were like into book 3. Before that, it was pretty nerve wracking. But that I was just like, he said ahead of time, he's like, strap yourself in. We don't know where we're going. And I was like, okay, I finally listened to him. So, but yeah, Joe strikes me as that kind of a guy and that kind of a storyteller.
I just want to comment on Gwendy's final chapter. What's book 3 called? I'm falling.
Final task.
That's it. Gwendy's final task. I'm not gonna spoil it, but the ending legit made me cry. Brennan told me ahead of time because he read it before me. As soon as he finished it, he texted me. He's like, "You got to buy the audiobook," because that's how I consume most of the stuff. And I got it right away, listened to it, and holy shit, you guys wrote a hell of a book. Well, 3 books. You did 3. All right. Yeah. Long story short, you did a good job.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think we shed some tears too. I mean, I know I was very. Steve, I thought Steve was going to write the entire ending, and he wrote up to a certain point, and left me to do, that final, dot on the I and the final cross on the T. And I mean, I know I was choked up when I was finished, and he, I think he was the same. I actually took a screenshot of the text because he's like, man, we nailed the ending. I don't know about the rest, but we nailed the ending. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I got one more thing, and then Brennan jump in. Is the one time we had Peter on, we talked about Talisman 3, and then that was like 2 years ago. And then flash forward to Stephen King going on a great podcast called Talking Scared with Neil McRoberts, and Peter said that. Steve said that Peter wrote an outline for Talisman 3.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And me and Brendan were talking about it. We're like, he had to have done that after sometime after we talked to him, because there wasn't long until after
right.
he departed. And we're just like, that's so cool. I want to, if that book never happens, I just want to read that outline. Peter is poetic. And then Joe's like a shoot him up with style type of guy,
Joe's a front porch guy who's just going to sit and tell you a story. And to be honest, I mean, I obviously I am much closer to Joe, and I like that. And that's the only way I know how to be. If I tried to be like Peter, I'd be horrible and unreadable. And just, I described Chasing the Boogeyman as like a campfire story. And to me, becoming the Boogeyman is just an extension of that. It's the same thing. It's just, hey, gather around and, you hear all that stuff in the woods. That's good. You never know what's out there. And let me tell you this story.
Yeah, you certainly build up that. You talked about the eating the hair thing, but like that's super unique and original. But you do that throughout the first book. No, I'm not saying everything, each step's original and unique or whatever. I'm just saying, like, you write it so well that it's just little moments where it's like in reality. Like, I could be in my basement that I'm in right now, and if the lights are off, that's quiet suspension that kind of outdoes if you were to just see a gory scene. And you do that throughout this book too really well. So you're talking about how you couldn't emulate Peter Straub. I would say no one could emulate what you did.
Yeah, well, that'd be cool to think. I just think, again, to me, it's like it's a campfire story. So it's not, and I probably came on the show and talked about it. Like when Chasing the Boogeyman was about a week or so away, like where we are right now. Yep. I remember, I didn't really have any concerns about it. And then my publisher's telling me, pre-orders are really high, and it was getting a lot of buzz, and it was about a week or 2 weeks before it was due. And I remember I had that thought. I was like, oh shit, this is a really traditional story. This is Michael Myers, and this is the things that go bump in the night. And it's more about what you don't see. And that scene where I take the trash out and I just know he's there somewhere watching. You know, I'm like, this is a campfire story. Oh, and it's about me. And I had that. I had that.
The
You know,
gall, sir. The
it was only
gall.
several minutes, but it was pretty intense. Where I was like, holy crap, who's going to care about this story about this schmuck from Edgewood, Maryland? You know, and there's absolutely does not reinvent the wheel. There's no, it ends up having a great plot twist only because it fooled a lot of people, which is wonderful, and that was my intention. But again, and I feel the same way about Becoming the Boogeyman. It's a solid campfire story, and there's a lot of heart in it. And yeah, like you said, I mean, it's if someone wants to imitate it, that's great. I would love that. I would love seeing more books like that, just because that's just like with the magazine. I always publish stuff that I'd like to read if it was in someone else's magazine or someone else's anthology. That's the simplest way I look at it is I'm doing it because there's not enough other ones out there. But with this book, yeah, I just a lot of fun. And again, I no intentions to be, with Peter, you always felt like he sat down trying to knock it out of the park. And again, if I did that, I think I'd be getting a long phone call from my agent saying, Rich, did you have a head injury when you were writing this book? So
I think there's a lot of merit in that campfire story vibe, though. All right, so I've got more Boogeyman questions, but I want to take us on a short tangent, unless Rich wants to rant and rave.
No.
A fair bit of the Boogeyman mythos takes place in 1988. I actually want to take us back to 1983, which is the last time, if my research is correct, that the Orioles won the World Series.
Oh,
so, yeah, Cal Ripken's rookie year.
So with the
you're not supposed to do crotch shots at the guest.
With the baseball playoffs about a week away, how far do you think the Orioles are going this year? We're going to put you on the spot.
Oh, you know what? I would never jinx them by saying, but I absolutely think. Well, you know what? This is probably a cop-out answer, but the thing is I believe it. I think they could be one and done and lose in that first series, or I really think they could blow through some really good baseball teams and win it all. They're all young and I always said about me when I started the magazine, I was young and dumb, so I didn't know to be scared. And I think a lot of these guys are like that. I think they're just out there, man. They are having fun and they feel very, very close. There's a lot of love in that clubhouse. And sometimes I think that's what does it. That's where that magic comes from. So, yeah, I'm excited to watch them. And I'll be the first to admit it. It's like, it's been rough being an Oriole fan until last year. So I've stopped watching them as much as I used to. And I mean, I was a season ticket holder from, I don't know for how many years, a decade or whatever. And then we just got too busy. And then they really started sucking. So I was glad I sold my tickets. But yeah, I think they could go far. But at the same time, we could talk in 2 weeks and I'd be like, yeah, it didn't surprise me. We'll see, man. Their pitchers get hot. I think they could win.
But also, like, even if they do fizzle this year, they like you said, they got a young core. They could be back next year and the year after, which is kind of cool to see.
They've got the number one farm team, and they've got who's going to probably be the American League Rookie of the Year. They've got some bona fide studs. So I think they're going to be a force for a while. I think it just happened. It was building, and then boom. It's that false overnight success thing. But yeah, I think they're going to be good for a while. And I've been watching.
Now I just lost half our listeners, so my apologies. But
like baseball, what are the Orioles?
Now, without being too forward, I do wonder if you have both personal or publishing plans to continue the Boogeyman series, and what you can tell us about that.
You know what? I don't know. The second book certainly ends with an open door to a third book. If there is more, it'll just be one more book. And that's, I'm saying that as someone who said that, the first was a standalone and there would be no sequel. And then there came a sequel. So I don't know how far I can be trusted, but I was being honest then. And I'm being honest now when I say, the most I can envision is one more book. But, who knows? I have a 2-book deal with Simon Schuster. Becoming the Boogeyman is the first one. I'm probably 2 or 3 weeks away from finishing the second book for that contract. And then, who knows what happens next? I do know one thing is Billy and I just sold them a book called, The Complete Widow's Point. So that'll be cool. But after that, there's no contract or anything. So now, I mean, if the ideal situation would be great to, do another couple books, one of them be book 3 and then the other one be a standalone, like the one I'm working on now. But who knows what the future holds? I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah. No, actually, I wanted to talk about that anyway. You said that you sold them The Complete Widow's Point, which incidentally has a blurb from Peter Straub in it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what we can expect from that.
I'm trying to think what I can tell. We sold it on just a proposal, so there's no, other than the first book, there's not a lot down on paper. And we're still in the discussion phase, and it's only been, pretty light because he knows I don't want to. He's finishing editing a book, and I'm finished writing this book, so I don't want to get into a whole new storyline. But we're gonna pick up right where that first book left off, but with a different kind of set of characters. I mean, that novella we're gonna rewrite it, expand it, and that'll serve as like the first third of a cohesive novel. So there'll be a little bit of a jump after this book ends, and we'll write it in such a way that it's much more natural and organic, and then we'll continue the story for another 60,000-70,000 words. But yeah, we plan on it'll be in the same vein, and I'm excited because I don't really do a lot of supernatural stuff at all. So kind of going back there and having no rules to follow, because anything you can think of, you're like, well, hell, it's a ghost or a spirit, man. They do whatever the hell they want. That was really liberating in Widow's Point. And again, talk about, when that came out, we just felt like, well, we certainly didn't reinvent the wheel. It's all these old chestnuts of horror, but it worked. We heard from a bunch of people who were like, this is the scariest little book we've ever read. So that was nice. And I think that's what gave us the confidence to kind of continue the story.
Yeah. Now, when the way you portray Billy in these books is 9 times out of 10, when you mention him, he's up in his room working on a story. You portray him, whether it's, purposefully or not, as this really hardworking writer. And I wonder what it's been like working with him.
It's just been fun. It's been, to have the kid who was like, sitting on my lap or sitting next to me in an easy chair reading, these Ripley, Believe It or Not books from a really early age. And then these books of the Tales of the Unexplained. And then, then we'd start watching these horror films together. His first R-rated movie, his and Noah, both my sons, the first R-rated movie they ever watched was Silver Bullet, the Stephen King werewolf thing. So that, again, like me, they've Billy in particular has been this little weirdo right from early age. And so to be able to write with him has been cool. And he's much smarter than I am. I mean, they're reading Ulysses for this book club that him and like 4 of his friends have. And I'm the one who skipped all those classes in college to work on the magazine, and he's the one who actually went and figured out a way to make it interesting. Yeah, he's written some pretty cool stuff that people haven't seen yet that I think is going to blow him away. And yeah, he is. I didn't want him to have too big of a role in this book, because I thought we had enough characters rolling around. I already threw my wife into the fire, and again, I wanted to portray it as very accurate to how it is, and that's what it is. He's got the top of the house is a cool spot. I mean, he's got his own like big sitting room with sofas and all that, and a closet that's huge that he's turned into an office, and then separate is his bedroom and a bathroom and all that. So he's got kind of his own apartment up there. So yeah, he's up there working all the time, for his Patreon page, and he's finished, I don't know, 2 novels now, I think, and a short story collection that's all tied in. The stories are all tied in, and stuff that I could have never done in my early 20s. So that's the cool thing. And Widow's Point's going to be exciting because we haven't, other than short stories, we haven't worked on anything of any length for a while. So yeah, it's going to be neat to kind of find who's going to want to do which parts and just trade it back and forth and be challenging to each other. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's got to be fun. It's got to be exciting, working with someone so close to you. Candace, I'd like to throw it to you. Go right on ahead.
Finally, after you stole my question.
I
Yeah.
am so sorry.
Now I have to take us in a new direction.
Sure.
So, with that note, cemetery dance is huge in the industry itself. But what I wanted to ask about right now is the trade paperback line you guys are working on right now, which is doing some amazing things with regards to the indie world. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and like what is the plan for the next year or so and where you kind of see that line moving?
You know what? It is, and Kevin Lucia, who is in charge of the paperback line, would echo this. Well, at least he would if he was being honest with everybody. Which sometimes when you work for a company, you kind of, you're not because you don't want to get in trouble. But we're number one, we're really excited about it. We're happy about how it's doing right now. But we're very much in a look and see, situation with it because I love the fact that we're able to put out quantity as well as quality. We're able to get, a really solid mix of titles out there. And also, anthologies, standalone novels, novellas, collections, a little bit of everything, which you really can't afford to do in hardcover, especially,
Right.
limited edition hardcover these days. But we'll just wait and see, wait and see how supported it is by the retailers and the individuals. Hopefully it'll continue to do well. Because I've had to rein him in at times. He's thinking 3 or 4 years down. I'm like, stop. Let's just see. Let's make sure we're doing this intelligently. And yeah, I mean, it's I've been so busy, I haven't been able to. But I go in there, and I deliver checks, and I, every once in a while I'll help out. But it's really been Dan and Mindy and Kevin and Megan and all the rest of the crew over there. And thank God Brian Freeman's still involved, even though it's just via phone and email a couple times a week. He's got office hours. I wouldn't let him go away completely. You should have him on the show. He hates doing any promoting.
I think I've asked him before. It was probably like 2 years ago. I don't think he replied to that.
Well, you should write him after this and say, listen to Chizmar's podcast because he brings you up. He brings up the fact that you're a big fat chicken. But he's doing so many interesting things as a writer and as a publisher, and he probably has tons to talk about that we don't really text or talk about because we're both so busy. But he'd be a great guest. He's someone who genuinely loves this. He worked in a bookstore when he was a teenager. He read those McCammon paperbacks and was been reading King since he was old enough to read and all that. So he's like, his story is very similar to mine, where he's here for all the right reasons, and he's much smarter than me and a better businessman. But again, he's still invaluable to cemetery dance, and he'd be a great guest. And now you can kind of tell him that I called him out on the air and told you that
I am.
Because I'm going to drag him I'm going to make him do a signing or two with me. As a matter of fact, I might, because I've got some Pennsylvania stores trying to get me to add on for October or November, and maybe I'll do a dual signing. I'll convince them, and I can get Keen to come too or something. I don't know, but yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Was there a question in there? I can't even remember. Oh, about cemetery dance. Yeah. So the paperback line. Yeah, I love the fact that we're able to get out numbers. That's the big thing is that we're able to get out a variety of people, because I think that's what we need. Those old paperback houses that don't exist anymore, that used to have 2 new titles every month and that kind of thing.
Talking about like Zebra.
Yeah. Well, even Pocket Books and all of them, NAL, they all had them. But and Kevin he does what a good editor should do. He fights, to get every author some advertising money and decides where it would be best spent. And he certainly has no qualms in coming to me and saying,
we're having him on before we get lost in anything else. We're gonna have him with John Bowden and Bob Ford.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they're gonna be talking about cemetery dance books.
Yeah, and he'll be the first to tell you. He's like, yeah, it's hard to nail Rich down because he's so busy, and sometimes I have to convince him to do this or that. But that's what an editor does with a publisher. Sometimes he has to convince them to use good sense, and then sometimes the publisher has to say, slow down and stop spending all my damn money.
Yeah, I've been on
Well,
the editor end for.
he's actually spending some of your money on my website
Good. No,
because
I
you
mean, like
guys are
Wait, what's your
well,
website? Plug it.
Cemetery Dance is my sponsor for this month for Uncomfortably Dark. And you guys have been since June, I think, June, July, August, to where I am featuring you guys on the home page, and then there's links and everything to the new releases for the month that he wants out, and then there are featured author interviews with your authors and everything. So a little bit of that is actually coming towards
good.
my site, which actually is a indie horror community author
Up and
review
coming.
and interview web page and all of that. And I've been running that for like a year now, but he started working with me on that in June, and we've had a lot of fun with it. So it's been working out nicely. So thanks for that little bit of money and support for my
Oh, good.
website and helping keep
Good.
things going for me.
Yeah, I mean that's the value of having someone like him, Dan Franklin. They both really have their fingers on the pulse of the
Yeah.
genre, what's going on, and that's wonderful. I
Yeah,
mean,
I work with them a lot.
I'm still a huge fan. I'm still the dummy buying old back issues and different books off eBay. My wife is constantly, "What'd you get today?" Um,
I
and
hear
that
you
stuff
that, brother.
the stuff that used to be cheap is no longer cheap. That's the thing. You used to
No,
have
it's
these
not.
paperbacks and these back issues, and now people are figuring out that with online being such a huge presence, the printed stuff is become kind of like treasure.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no matter what, I just don't, there's no way I can keep up with all of it. And I, the good, and I tell Billy all the time, I'm like, you should kind of dive in this world more. And I think at some point he probably will, but he's really smart in that he doesn't want to lose focus, and he's not paying too much attention to, he supports probably a half dozen Patreon pages. Cause I mean, I see the stuff that comes in his mail, and, I know he pokes around social media, but even that every once in a while he'll disconnect from because he's just like, man, it's all too distracting, and that's
Smart
good.
kid.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So I think that'll serve him well in the long run. But yeah, but that again, like I said, that's the cool thing. Dan Franklin told me to post on a page on Facebook, Books of Horror, I think, and I was like, you know what, let me check it out first before I, and I was like, oh wow, I loved it. It's a bunch of people, sure. Just like with any other group, you're going to run into an idiot or two. But
Oh yeah.
to me, if you find people who have a similar passion and it's really genuine and it's authentic, it's just, for me, I love finding those places. And that's where they've been able to kind of turn me on to a few places like that, where it's like, yeah, I don't care how long it's been around. I don't care how, polished it is, or, if they like, if they still have 10 people posting and saying, I can't understand a damn thing Peter Straub has ever, written. That's all right. That's okay.
We're gonna fight him. Oh yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's all right, man. I mean, because everybody's got different tastes. I mean, I love Peter, but I haven't read everything he's written. I need to. But man, that's an investment. That's not a beach read, at least not for me.
Your books are beach reads.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. You know what? Boom. When I turned to Becoming the Boogeyman, and I don't have readers and all that stuff. The only person who had read it when I sent it to my agent was Billy. All I wanted to know was, did it read fast? Because if it read fast, that means it had narrative drive. That meant that you wanted to turn that page to find out what happened next. And that's the question I asked my agent when she read it. My editor, and then the folks he had read it. That was the first big kind of hurdle I want to pass. Was it a quick read for you? And again, there's many writers who that doesn't interest them. If they want to make the reader work and all that, but I know I have to be a page turner and be a beach read if the book is successful.
If no one's gonna go,
I have one more, if I may.
Sure.
And you can say no. But I have to ask this because I will probably never get the opportunity to ask the man himself or to ever meet him. So I have to kind of do it through you.
Oh, that's fine.
But what was that moment like when you first met Stephen King?
You know what? The first time I met him, he invited my wife and I up to New York City. He had I think it was 25 years. Yeah, it was 25 years. Carrie was published in 74, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
So this was 1999. Billy was a baby. This is the first time we left Billy, with someone else. That both Carrie and I had left him. So I don't remember how old he was, but he wasn't too young. We were late separators with our baby, but I just remember that was the case. And he had a big 25th anniversary party at Tavern on the Green for Carrie. And in addition to cool people like, Kathy Bates and all these, superstars, Salman Rushdie and all these people, he invited me and Kara. And that was the first time I met him, was out on the dance floor. And he just turned around and he's like, Rich, you're the man. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You send me the most awesome books. That was cool. But it was, it was a big party and there wasn't a lot of time to talk. The biggest moment for me, a couple of them. One is the first time I went and visited him down in Florida. And I was down there for a film festival, and he picked me up at this really cool Sarasota hotel that I didn't know. He pulled up in a convertible, and I got in, and he gave me a hug, and he said, "This is where Black House was born." I was like, "What?" He goes, "This is where Peter stayed, and I would come here, and he would come into the house. We'd take turns, and we wrote together for different sections."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah.
So that was just neat. That was a surreal car ride. We went and picked up a soda at a gas station, and then we went to a bookstore, and then we went back to his house and hung. But just bizarre. Just what the hell am I doing here? And then another time he invited me to a couple movie premieres up in Bangor. Once I went with Kara and Billy, I think, and then the other time was me, Billy, and Noah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you just go and you hang out and you eat. I went to dinner with him and maybe 10 or 12 of us ahead of time, and then went to the premiere. And you just you're like, what the hell am I doing here? But you know what? After a while, you stop thinking that, because he is just a really cool guy, and he's normal.
Yeah.
And you look at him, he's wearing jeans and tennis sneakers just like you, and goes out of his way to make you feel comfortable. And yeah, I mean, just great guy. But it's still it's just still weird for the guy who grew up, with one of this guy's paperbacks in his back pocket all the time.
Yeah.
Hanging out with him or publishing him or texting with him or, and at the top of that pyramid is writing with him is still all the time by reporters and by media people. And I always just say the word is ridiculous. That is the best word to describe what it's like, what I think about the situation. All of it is just, it's freaking ridiculous that a constant reader, normal dude got a chance to, write with him and was trusted to go to Castle Rock and Derry and all these places that lived in his head. So yeah, long-winded answer to your question, but he deserves
That's okay.
it.
Thank you.
He's a cool dude.
He's the reason why I write. Like, I stumbled on King when I was about 10, and I own everything he's ever written. I've read everything he's ever written back to back to back to back to back repeatedly. Like, he would be my number one person to ever meet in life, but it'll probably never happen.
So with everything you just said, I could say the exact same thing. So now imagine you writing with him. That's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, no.
You and I are the same. And he is not.
Yeah,
so,
that would just be amazing. But yeah, thank you.
Oh no, my pleasure. I always, I'm always happy. People are always, you probably don't want to hear this. I'm like, you know what? He's such a great guy that, and he knows, I'm way past the, Steve, you're great, because he would just be like, Rich, shut up. I mean, I texted him a couple of days ago and said, "Hey, the Red Sox were eliminated from playoffs," and I got back up.
He got you back, Brandon. Well, actually, got us back. Bastard.
I knew that.
Trust me, I got plenty of texts.
We were fucking awful this year. We deserve to.
Guys, stop baseball talk. You lose the audience.
I got plenty of texts from him over the years. Was sorry the Red Sox swept the O's. Not. So yeah. Have you guys seen, before we go, because I got to go, but have you seen those pictures that I posted in the past of Steve with an Oriole hat?
Yeah, and
I don't think so.
You had a Sox hat on?
I had a Sox hat on one, but in the infamous group of photos, one, he has the Orioles hat hanging on his bedpost.
Yeah.
Another one,
I've seen one where he has it on a grill or something.
Yeah, another one, he's dipping his legs in the pool when he's wearing it, and the last one, he's got it on the grill tongs and he's putting it in the grill. And that all those were a result of a bet he lost that I don't remember what year. It was whoever had the best regular season record. The loser had to wear the other guy's hat and send graphic evidence. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great. We really appreciate your time. Do you want to spare a minute for final thoughts? I don't want to cut anyone off. I'll start with you, Rich. Any final thoughts, sir?
No, just I appreciate everybody who supports CD and myself as a writer, and you guys make it so I can do this for a living and have for 35 years. So I'm a very lucky guy and very grateful.
Absolutely. Candace.
Just want to say thank you and for all the stories about Steve and for the book. And hey, just keep on doing what you are for yourself and for the horror community as a whole, because it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Brennan.
Obviously, Rich, thank you for your time as always. Becoming the Boogeyman is awesome. October 10th is my birthday. Thank you for the birthday present. Appreciate it. And beyond that, I think this is your third appearance here. I think this is the least amount of fart jokes we've ever made. I don't know how I feel about that.
We did make fart jokes on like one of my appearances, because I remember Patrick was like so shocked. I think he thought I have no idea how he thought coming in I was going to be like too grown up for that. But
no, absolutely not.
Like, this is shocking.
Very naive move.
No, not really.
There we go. At least one. Patrick, final thoughts.
My final thoughts are: I have repeatedly told my son when he tells me he farts, he's starting to half, and I say farts are always funny, Philip. And I always think of you, no bullshit, because of that conversation where I'm pretty sure that's what you said. Farts are funny, but you said it in such a way where you're like, it's a fact. But
hey, my wife walks in a room. If I am laughing hysterically, she knows. TikTok farts.
Yep.
Simple as that. If I am laughing to like, I can't stop myself laughing, like I sound 12 years old and just ecstatic and so happy, it's because I'm watching, one of those stupid TikToks with the guy farting and the people walking by, jerking their heads back and making faces. And yeah, she just shakes her head. And I know at some point she's like, if all your readers knew, and I'm like, oh, I tell them.
They know.
I tell them, I hope someone farts at one of my signings and I can laugh there, because I'm not, I'm not above it. So anyway, on that note,
I think that you have
the note.
You have all the traits that remain happy forever. So that's wonderful. Appreciate your time, Rich. You run another amazing
Thanks
book.
a lot.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
You made choices in podcasts. Thanks for picking us.
Right.
Thanks, Rich.
Bye.
All right, bye.